They would be asked questions. They just sat there during the day. And we were told by the nuns not to mix with those children.
Oh, they used to throw, here in the home, they used to throw the bread out. Like, you know the batch loaves, and squeeze them and throw them out at you, as if we were animals, and the people had just grabbed them up, and now used to eat them all. It was lovely. And I say that's why I was in hospital a lot for. I was put down as a celiac, but I'm not suffering with that today.
The kids outside, they could enjoy Christmas coming, Easter coming, summer coming, because holidays. Like, we hadn't a clue about that. When I went out to my foster mother's home, nearly 7 years of age, and they're putting up the Christmas tree and they were explaining to me, and I was all excited. You know, the glass of milk and the carrot for the roll toff, and then you were put to bed early. And like, a woman in there, and her 4 fingers were gone. And she said, what happened? She said, I cut them with a knife. So she had to be brought in, and they had to be amputated altogether. And she said, why did you do that? Because of the big drums. All the clothes would be put into this big drum, and to go around and washed, and then to be all in a heap, and they had to try and pull them out. Can you imagine? Trying to tear them out. So she did that in order she wouldn't have to work anymore. I'm PJ Haverty, and I was born in the Mother and Baby Home in Tuam. I live about 15 miles away from here, where I was fostered out. And the reason that I'm with you here today, I just want to tell my story, what went on in Ireland in the past, and of the church and the nuns, what they did, that they shouldn't have done.
I started my research back in 2012. I only started out small, doing an essay for our local historical journal, decided to do it on the home, and it's only by degrees when I found out what went on in the home.
My mother got pregnant, and somebody went down and told the priest, and the priest came up to the house, and of course he laid down the laws then and told her that she was to be kept indoor, so as the other kids around wouldn't see her, the other girls. And when the baby was due to be born, then that she was to be taken to Tuam, where the nuns here would look after her.
Any woman that went in there had to suffer. She carried that child for 9 months. And the next thing was she had to stay there for 12 months to look after the child, do domestic, slaving there for what? For the Catholic, for the nuns, and for all that. And the next thing was out the door, and the door slammed behind your back, never to return.
So when the 12 months was up, then they opened the door and told her she'd have to leave. They made all the decisions. Now, if my mother had £100 that time, which you couldn't, totally impossible, she could have bought me. But they had no money back in them days. So she went around Tuam looking for work then, because she didn't want to leave me there. She always had in her mind, I'm going to take him out of there. So she got work then as a cleaner in the hospital in Tuam. It's closed down now since. And every week for 5.5 years, she would walk to that home, knock on the door, plead with the nuns, please hand out my son. I want my son. And they said, no, go away, you're not having him. He's going to be fostered out.
I remember the babies here in the home in Tuam being all left out in wooden pens, and the bottles be thrown in at them, and you see them being made by buying a rabbit that was on our birth certificates. And she used to throw the bottles in, and other mothers would come along and feed the babies.
We were sent down to school then. And how I remember is that's the only time we got out, because I don't call that place a home, I call it a prison. That's what it was. Because if you look out the windows, there's a high wall all around, you couldn't see anything. So we were marched down to school in the morning, and you held on to the hand of the next child. And you were marched down with the nuns, down to school. Now, we had to go 10 minutes late in the morning. We had to leave 10 minutes early in the evening. So we wouldn't mix with the kids from outside. You know, That's the punishment. Like that, we were known as bastards. That was the name that was put on us because we were born out of marriage.
Even though I was only about 5 or 6 at the time, I do remember them being in the class, and I remember them as being, you could say, shabby, kind of cold looking, very thin and very, very quiet. And they weren't treated the same as the rest of the children in the class. They were kind of kept on their own. They were segregated, and they were very seldom they would be asked questions. They just sat there during the day. And we were told by the nuns not to mix with those children.
Here in the home, they used to throw the bread out, like you know the batch loaves, and squeeze them and throw them out at you, as if we were animals, and the people had just grabbed them up. And I used to eat them all. It was lovely, and I say that's why I was in hospital a lot for. I was put down as a celiac, but I'm not suffering with that today.
An elderly man used to laugh at us, because if there was a car or something parked on the side of the road, we used to look into the mirror and we start laughing and looking again. We didn't realise it was a mirror. We thought it was just one of these funny glasses.
But they were very cruel, the nuns. I remember a child there, now I didn't save me other documentary, and you mightn't put it in it either. A child being kicked. And I don't know where, it was a nun, and she was a small nun. Now I know the child was smaller than me when I look back at it. And they kicked her, and the blood was pouring out of her. She was taken away. I'd never seen the child after that, never. Now I was old, I was about 9, you know.
Tuam was probably the first supermarket in Ireland where people could come in and buy babies. And if the weak one then, well, if it died, that's it, just get rid of it. It's like bad fruit.
When I found that, then I started really getting into the whole story, wanting to do more, wanting those children to be heard, wanting the story to be out there. And then, of course, the burials then were the epitome of the whole thing. So many died, a lot of them needlessly, and they were just wiped away. They were just wiped out of history. They were put down in a former sewage tank. They weren't even given the decency of a burial or of a few prayers or even of a little coffin.
I had to make the cows in the morning before I went to school. I'd make them again in the evening, and I had to go to school in the morning, hail, rain or snow. And this woman, neighbour, my friend will tell you, she used to collect me after the road being called, and I'd have to polish the house. They had 7 bedrooms.
You know, nobody ever came along and asked you how you were. They always went to the foster mother and the foster father. They never spoke to the child. They seen you, and you were dressed, you were well dressed, and you were fed and that kind of thing. But they never considered your emotional needs, and that was never looked at. And I don't think that was looked at in lots of children that were fostered. They were a commodity in lots of houses, same as I was a commodity, because the only reason they fostered me was to help them work on the land.
Oh, they battered me one time with my teeth. What happened there? Oh, I hadn't the work done, and the son came along, and he battered my face against the wall and pulled my head in, and he battered me against the wall, and my teeth were destroyed. So at 12-year-old I had 4 dentures. 12-year-old I had dentures.
When the babies died there, the nuns were getting £5 from the council to bury the child, and instead of that then they kept the £5 and they put the child in the disused sewage tank because it was empty anyways. And if you're baptised, you're supposed to get a decent burial. And the most annoying thing about it, when the hospital and the home closed down, they took the nuns' remains. They brought in new coffins and took the remains up of the nuns and brought them down and buried them in Knock. So in that disgraceful, and to do what they did, what we call them angels, in that septic tank, they could do that to the nuns. They were buried twice, so they were. with full church, Catholic, the lot.
We probably wouldn't be here today, you know, if we're Catholic quarters and it's like myself and PJ now, like we met together like that. We wouldn't know one another, you know. Why is such a grievance in the Catholic Church? There's no apology from the bishop, no apology from the nuns.
Hopefully this month a report is to come out on burial practices and how the religious buried the children, and I will be pressing for acknowledgement that this was wrong, the burials were wrong, and we need to rectify that. We need an acknowledgement and apology, and we need to do something about it, and I will stick with this to the very end.
I'd love to get into the mind of these nuns and what way they were thinking of, because as I said, they were followers of Christ and they're supposed to look after the poor, the vulnerable, the weak and the dying and that. And why did they do what they did, like, you know? And then when you look, then you think greed, power and money as the world destroyed. And that's what happened to these nuns. That's what happened, Rome, the church, everything. It all came down to power and money, control on everyone.
Hello folks, my name is Philip and I was born on the 13th of the 8th, 1977 in Tuam, County Galway, in the Secours in Tuam. In the background you'd see a documentary on television last night. To my surprise, I never ever seen this documentary. I'm shocked because this documentary is a place where I was born and reared, in Tuam, County Galway, in a little village called Headford, County Galway. There's the documentary behind me. As I said, I was born in the Secours in Tuam in 1977. I was one of the last few babies born in the Secours. When I watched this documentary last night on television, I was astounded. I stayed up, I actually watched it twice because it shocked me. And one of the reasons why it did shock me is because of this documentary in Tuam. I was born in Tuam, the Secours. There's a picture of it there. The third window from the top on the left hand side. I was told that my mother carried me out to the window and showed me to my father. From the gates, he was not allowed in. I remember that very well. And flashbacks came back to me when I seen this documentary here. One of the reasons is my own mother. She told me way before we were all born, back in the early 60s, 1960s, that she had a baby boy. I can't remember how long she was gone, but she went into this Secours hospital in Tuam, and in the middle of the night, she says the white nurses, nuns she called them, took the baby away from her, and they came back in the middle of the night and told her that the baby died from heart failure. She was astonished, of course, and she asked, where is the baby now? And she was told that the baby was buried in the back garden of the Secours. That's all she was told. No death certs were given. She went on and lived her life, but she found herself back in the Secours a year later, this time with a baby boy. Again, I don't know how far she was gone in the pregnancy, and yet again the baby was taken away from her in the middle of the night, and the nuns came back in the white dresses, stating that the baby died from what's the name, broncholic or something, some name like that, some name I can't pronounce it right, but something broncholic, I can't 100% remember what it was, something like that. And again she says the baby was taken away and buried in the back of the Secours hospital. She never went back there for a few years later. She had my brother Billy in University College Hospital in Galway, and David as well. And then I was brought back to the Secours in Tuam in County Galway because we lived near there, and I was rushed in because she left at near time. and she says that she never let go of me once I was born. She never let the nuns get an opportunity to grab me and get hold of me. And she says when she was released from the hospital in the Bon Secours, she was told by the nuns that you're one of the lucky ones that's going home with your baby. Yeah, so this has brought a lot of flashbacks to me, and I want to wonder, where is my brother and sister? Are they still buried in the back of the garden of the Bon Secours Hospital? Not this location. Don't know anything about this location. This location you're about to watch is totally new and fresh to me, that they found 900 and odd bodies in a sewage tank in the back of where the nuns lived. Is there another location that they don't know about, or is this the location where they dumped all the dead babies, or was our brother and sister sold by the nuns? I don't know, but we never got any death certs to prove or disapprove that they passed on. But where are they? Are they in another sewage tank in behind that hospital? I don't know, can't answer that. I sent emails off to RTE. I phoned them, got no acknowledgement. I even rang a radio station, I got no acknowledgement. Hopefully somebody who watches this story might help me to find out, how do I find out what happened to our brothers and sisters. Anyway, take a look at this, and we talk to you after this one.
For a period of over 35 years, a child died there every 2 weeks. That adds up to nearly 800 children. Their remains now discovered in a series of 20 underground chambers under what was a Catholic mother and baby home run by nuns in the west of Ireland. It's believed most of the children died from natural causes or from malnutrition. Well, the discovery came despite several years beforehand the Irish Premier officially apologising for the treatment of 10,000 women and girls incarcerated in Catholic church-run Magdalene laundries. There they were treated as virtual slaves, some still open right up until the 1980s. Well, in Tuam now, though, the Irish government trying to decide what to do with the children's remains, leave them be or give them a proper burial. The final decision due to be revealed in February 2019, a long and painful wait for survivors of the home. Well, France 24's Julie Dungelhoff and Aurore Chloe Dupree revisit Tuam for France 24.
My pants wouldn't be washed for months and months. So they'd be, if I wanted to take off my pants, the pants would actually stand up. It was that filthy.
I believe in one Lord, Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, God from God, light from light.
And I used to try to cover my head in, and then I tried to fall off the sleeve. I could, because I niced them, terrible screech, terrible roar ran out from them, and the nuns shouting back and shut up.
I believe in one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church. I confess one baptism for the forgiveness of sins.
And these nuns inside are supposed to be following God's footstep and supposed to be helping the poor and people that needed help, and just kept closing the door.
And I look forward to the resurrection of the dead and the life of the world to come. Amen.
We accepted it because there was nothing we could do about it. They had the power.
In Ireland, up until the 90s, many children born out of wedlock were brought up in homes financed by the state and run by nuns. Some were fostered out, others never came out alive. In the small town of Tuam, Western Ireland, the remains of hundreds of children were found in a sewage facility underneath the housing estate where used to lie the mother and baby home.
The bodies are just over here now inside the thing. This is where they found the tank inside the wall here.
Oh, yes. That
area there now where they built house there. Didn't they get bones there?
They came across.
Were they human bones?
They were human bones, yeah.
On average, one child died every 2 weeks between the 1920s and the 60s. The forgotten angels, they're called, who came back to haunt the Catholic country. Patrick, Joseph and Walter endured 7 years at the home, run by the Bon Secours sisters.
You had the same probably routine every day. There was no love. There was no toys. There was nothing whatsoever. And you were just locked in this big building. And if you looked out as well, the walls were so high that you didn't see anything. It was like a prison, really.
We were reared in such a way that we were told nothing. I don't remember leaving here. I don't remember being brought to my foster home or anything like that.
The religion, the Catholic Church and the state here are all at fault for making life hell on us. Because I remember I used to be called a bastard. That's the name that on us, because being born out of wedlock. When my mother got pregnant, she had to take all the blame for it. She was a sinner because she didn't obey God's commandment that she shouldn't have got pregnant. It was enough to punish the mother, but why punish the child? There was no need of it.
Catherine Corliss used to go to the same school as them, and she always wondered why some of these kids, so skinny and dressed in rags, never made it to the classroom. Decades later, the amateur historian started doing some research at the local cemetery.
This plot here is called an Angel's Plot. It's where the children of the Tuam families are buried.
Catherine ploughed through hundreds of death certificates, archives, maps, but found no burial records for 796 children.
I met the keeper of the graveyard who has the book that lists everybody who was buried here. The 796 were not in his book, which means they're not buried here. So my next quest then was, where are they buried?
The Irish government eventually carried out scientific tests and confirmed Catherine's theory. Significant quantities of human remains, aged 0 to 3, are located in a mass grave underneath the nun's property.
This little one is 1939. Her name was Annie. She was only 3 months old, and she died of epilepsy. His name is Gerard. He was 1 month old, and he was the son of a domestic, which was put down for them all, and he died of a respiratory infection. A lot of those diseases, they weren't fatal if they were treated on time, and if they got the proper medication and the proper care. I do believe that they could have saved quite a lot more of them.
Amongst the victims, Marion Bridget, a little girl that Peter Moore Ryan has been searching for over the past 3 years, his younger sister. Both of them were born at the home, yet he never knew about her until Catherine Corliss contacted him.
We hope it's not closed, you know.
Peter is heading to Tuzla, the Child and Family Agency. That's where the home's documents were transferred when it closed in 1961. Admissions, adoption, medical records. Peter demands justice, the release of his sister's files. Our cameras are not welcome here.
So this is a surprise.
I know, I'm looking for my sister's
In relation to Mary
file.
and Bridget.
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
I want to see
Yeah.
that, you know, yeah.
And you see, there isn't a file on Mary and Bridget.
Why?
There never was a file on Mary and Bridget.
I was shocked to hear that because I thought everyone having the planet born in this planet should have some record. Like, she's just adamant. But then as I asked the question, why weren't we told this long ago by their barrister to our barrister? And that didn't happen. It looked very false, like, you know.
Peter and the other survivors feel they're up against a wall of silence. Caught in the media frenzy, the government only confirmed the existence of the mass grave in March last year.
It's really important that we acknowledge that these are part of, no doubt, the extraordinarily difficult times that they would have had to endure.
Uneasy words and no action so far. Authorities have yet to decide on what to do with the remains, leave them there, or exhume them and carry out DNA tests. Catherine Corliss, the housewife turned whistleblower, wants those responsible to confess their crime. She found an old map of Tuam issued by local authorities in 1970. That's when she noticed something unholy.
They know there's a burial ground there. They know it well, it's written here, and yet they tell me they know nothing. That was one of the obstacles. The obstacle was to get in to Galway County Council to see their records. It's quite obvious they want to hide this. It's too much. It's too big for them. It's almost like a collaboration between the government and between the nuns.
For her, the investigation should have started 50 years ago, when local boys were seen playing with human skulls. It was a rainy October afternoon ahead of Halloween, a day engraved in the mind of Mary Moriarty. She followed the boys and fell into a pit full of bundles. Stillborn babies, she was told, banned from consecrated grounds.
It was accepted that that's what it was, that it was used by the home for babies who weren't christened. It was about fear that you didn't question the people because it wasn't right. Do you know what I mean? They were the bosses, they ran the schools, they ran the church, and they had a say in everything. And we did nothing about it, but the people within the system didn't do anything about it either.
The power of the church, society turning a blind eye. Why didn't anyone help the children of Tuam?
Would they hit you or kick you or anything?
They hit you across the head.
Would they?
Yeah.
Across the head?
That evening, Peter went to his friend Patrick's, also a home child. He tells him about his fruitless meeting with the government official and his sister's missing files.
And I often did that, and I got sad. My biggest wish today would be if I could find my sister and know where she is this very moment. But I do not know, and somebody knows. It makes me think more now that she's not there in Tuam. She could be beyond in America, sold off, got money for them.
They were evil, that's why I call them. They weren't anything about themselves. They didn't care about the human being, human children, little children like ourselves at that time. They didn't care about it. All they wanted was get money.
Peter went from the nun's grip to a violent adoptive father who forced him to work on a farm at 4 years old.
I never understand why some human being would do that to another being. No, I just couldn't, no. And I got belted with the straps. He got the strap up from his waist, the leather strap with a buckle in it, and leave marks of the buckles and my legs and bum. And he always take off my trousers to do it. Always done that. Yeah, he put me across his knee and whacked me. For what? Nothing. To me, I can't remember how, but it might just 6 or 7 year olds that being done to, like, you know.
The Tuam home was one of a dozen such institutions in Ireland. Only a few survivors managed to find their biological mothers.
This would be the road my mother would have taken every week for 5.5 years to come out and try and get me out of the home. But the nuns wouldn't allow it. That they told her that he was going to be fostered out. That was very sad for her, because she knew then that she'd probably never see me again.
After years of research, Patrick Joseph finally located his mother in England. She had started a new life in London, got married, and never told anyone about her son in Ireland. One day, he knocked on her door.
Could see it in her that she was so nervous, because she didn't know what I was going to say. So I just went up and I just said, "Hello, Mother." This would be the first picture that was taken of my mother and myself in 1975. So you can see the smile. You know, just be able to hug, even give a kiss on the cheek and everything. It was so wonderful, like, you know. And, you know, you could tell people, "Oh, yeah, I have a real mother, all right. My birth mother is still alive. I've met her."
Like two strangers, Patrick Joseph and his mother got to know each other. But her pregnancy remained a taboo subject. She never told him in what circumstances she got pregnant.
Men had the power and the woman was always to blame. And I always feel about Adam and Eve. It was the woman that took the apple like and gave it to him, so it is her. And it's that way down through life. It's always the woman. And the men always get away.
Patrick Joseph's mother passed away in 2012 at 88 years old, taking her secret to the grave. Like her, some 35,000 women gave birth in such homes.
My mother, she carried that cross right through her life for nothing. So I want an apology, and I want to be able to get it in writing, so I can go back to her grave and read that over her grave to say that you didn't come in any sin and you would have met a beautiful mother. That's what I love to do.
Irish authorities and the Bon Secours sisters have refused to give us an interview. To this day, Patrick Joseph and the other home children are still waiting for the Commission of Investigation to reveal the truth.
For this so-called Catholic country would do the likes of that, and what we call them are angels, which are angels. I could be in there too if I had bad health. I was lucky that I was born a healthy baby.
It's apparent that the authorities wanted to forget that these children ever existed. So it's horrific. So hopefully they will make amends now, maybe, and do the right thing.
They know damn well what went on. We've got loads of records to prove what they did. Living records, yeah. And all they're waiting for us to pass away, yeah, it's gone now. We have what we want out of them.
France 24.
Tonight, significant quantities of human remains have been discovered at the site of a former mother and baby home in Tuam in County Galway. It comes after a commission of investigation began excavations at the site of a children's burial ground in October last year. It followed claims that 800 babies were buried at the site.
After months of investigations and a detailed excavation, confirmation today of what's been described as a shocking discovery. Behind this hoarding, the site where significant quantities of human remains have been found. They date from the time when the Bon Secours sisters operated a home in Tuam. Many of the remains have been specifically linked to the 1950s. Some of the bones were found in a large, disused septic tank which had been filled with rubble and debris before it was covered with topsoil. More were located in a separate underground structure, longer than the first, and divided into 20 chambers.
This news is very disturbing and will touch everyone's heart. There were, of course, strong suspicions about burials of this kind in Tuam for some time, and it was one of the reasons for setting up the Commission of Investigation in the first place. The information I have received confirms these suspicions, and importantly, they trace the remains specifically to the period of the home's operation, rather than to earlier times in our history, such as during the famine.
Scientific analysis on some of the remains revealed the age of death at between 35 fetal weeks to between 2 and 3 years. Those findings mark the latest stage in a long campaign to honour those who lived and died in the Tuam home.
I was born there in 1951 and I spent 6.5 years in it. And my mother spent 12 months with me. But once the 12 months was up, then they had to leave because they didn't want the bonding between the baby and the mother as you get older. So she was asked to leave and she was put out, and that was it.
PJ Haverty eventually tracked down his mother in England. She died 4 years ago.
I feel it wasn't her fault. It was the church, the state and this country that let her down. And I want an apology now because she didn't do anything wrong. She did not do anything, and I want an apology from the state and the church. So I can go back to her grave and read that over her grave, that she did nothing wrong whatsoever. You know, and she probably would have made a perfect mother as well.
And that search for justice is echoed by others who were born in the home in Tuam.
They can bury them in that ground if they want to, but make sure that it's properly minded and looked after like every other graveyard
in the place. Or either get a right place in the right graveyard and bury them there, and all the cousins and whatever should be there, let them be there and do it properly. And there'll be a monument there for these children of people to see, and their names on it.
In a brief statement this afternoon, the Bon Secours sisters said they wouldn't comment on the detail of today's announcement from the Commission, other than to say they were cooperating fully with the investigation. Pat McGrath, RTE News, Tuam, County Galway.
Right folks, so that's it. That's my story in relation to the Bon Secours Hospital in Tuam. 2 different locations, the hospital itself and the place where all the tragedy happened. And I hope you paid attention. Nearly 800 bodies were found in a sewage tank, septic tank, in the back of the buildings where the nuns lived, where they took control of all the babies and children. And the money that they made selling the babies off to people out in America, £5,000 and £6,000 pounds per child. And the government in Ireland sanctioned that, and so did the government in the United States. Thousands of boys and girls went missing in Ireland in relation to the greed and the filth of the nuns in Ireland. The Bon Secours. Shame. Shame on the Bon Secours nuns. Absolutely disgraceful. Will I ever know what happened to my own mother's babies? No, probably. Are they buried in the back garden of the Bon Secours Hospital, a different location? Well, that's up to the government now to go and look and see, is there another location with babies in it? That location that I'm only after telling you is not the location where my mother told me what the babies were buried. She says they were buried on the ground of the hospital. The nuns says that her babies were buried with the babies on the Bon Secours grounds. Whoa, what a story. What a shameful story for the Bon Secours nuns. And the government of Ireland, you should be ashamed of yourselves as well. Because we're getting the kids transferred from Tuam onto the planes and jetted out to America, all over the world. And the nuns getting paid €5,000 and €6,000 per child. And every time a child unfortunately died, the Galway County Council were paying £5 to bury the child, and they were keeping the money and putting the child down the septic tank. I'm absolutely distraught. I'm lost words in this one. Shame. Shame. Shame on the nuns. And you wonder why people stop going to churches now. Fucking hell. Shame on you. See you in the next one. It's long before.